Welcome back to the Man Overboard podcast, episode 45. Today we are interviewing Simon from Red Kite Games.
Simon's the founder and director of Red Kite Games. They've recently worked on the new Hogwarts Legacy game, but we also spoke about Simon's career in which he's worked on Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption, a bunch of different games. And then we talked about the gaming industry as a whole, cloud gaming, VR gaming.
Nostalgic gaming, games that, you know, Simon liked growing up, things that got Simon into video games and game development as a whole.
So pretty much a lot of gaming. Listen to the episode, enjoy. But the first question I wanted to ask you, Simon, is what originally motivated you to start working in the games industry and start working towards building beautiful video games?
So it was a passion for playing games, really. I always played games growing up. It was one of the main hobbies of mine. I always enjoyed, from playing when my brother got his first ZX Spectrum all the way up to, then getting, NES, SNES, Mega Drive, all those kind of consoles all the way up to the consoles of today. So, it's just been a big part of my life, big part of my social life. Obviously, gaming's getting, it's even bigger than it was, certainly when I started playing. But, it was a passion for just loving playing games and then, learning, well, actually, you can make a career out of it, which, was quite an exciting prospect.
Yeah. Was there any particular genre of games that you preferred as you were growing up? Was there any type that you liked?
I'd say what I enjoyed changed over time and as I got older. Starting out with some of the games back on the NES with the likes of, the early, it was very kind of Nintendo driven, I would say, early days for me. So, you're talking the Marios and the original Zeldas and things like that,
the
Kid
classics,
Icarus,
yeah.
some of those platformers. But then, I would say that my tastes in games really took shape probably around about when I got a PlayStation, so around about 94, 95. And then I think it was a year after the console come out, like Resident Evil, the very first one came out, and I really started to get into survival horror games. Mm-hmm. Also games like Final Fantasy VII was just amazing. I would say that, they're kind of, I guess my go-to genres have been those kind of, Final Fantasy games, survival horror games, also more recently, the likes of the Uncharted and Last of Us games and things like that. So I'd say my tastes have probably refined as the generations of consoles have come and the capabilities of what you can do and the kind of games you can make on them have changed.
I was going to say, because when you're getting up to that point and then making a point about the PlayStation being the first, I think that's when, we started to really see video games take off because we were getting 3D capability and all these different kind of aspects we could include then.
Yeah, 100%. I still don't think there's really been a jump forward as big as when the PlayStation first came out. I know the Saturn came out a little bit earlier than that, but, it just didn't have the same kind of impact.
It wasn't
a very good console, but it just didn't take off in the same way that Sony's did. Mm-hmm. But yeah, definitely, I still don't think there's been a jump forward quite like that since the PlayStation.
You mentioned Resident Evil there, and one thing we wanted to touch on, and this is a game that's had pretty much every game remastered. There seems to be a bit of a trend at the minute with remastering old games, and I think for me, when I look back at being a child and being younger playing some of those games, it brings back such a nostalgic memory. Working in the industry, have you noticed that trend as well and noticed more of a demand for games to become remastered and to have new versions of those older games?
Yeah, I think these new generations of players coming to play these games all the time, and these cycles, and you see it in the films industry as well with different IPs getting remade and rebooted and all these kind of things, and games is no different. I think that because of the increase in the enhancements in technology, you can go back and you can do some things with those games that you weren't previously able to do. There've been some really good remakes recently. Dead Space came out and was received really, really well. Metroid Prime as well. It's also from a risk perspective for game developers and games companies. If they know that they've had a successful game and they've built an audience, is that games cost a lot of money to make. if you can take something that you know has that audience and has been successful both critically and financially, then if you can then take that and enhance it and build it, bring it to a new audience and also just make the game bigger and better, then, that investment, there's less risk around it because, it's just, it's exactly the same reason why films are doing it and TV.
I was going to say, yeah, we've seen quite a few things that point towards people wanting old games back. Like recently, I don't know if you saw that Team Fortress 2 released a massive patch, and they've hit peak players, which goes to show that there still was interest, but it's just that that Steam, Valve themselves weren't upkeeping the game. They weren't doing, quality of life updates even close to that.
Yeah, and there's also like a trend starting to happen where games are coming back out and being some quality of life improvements are being done to them, but people are actually wanting the old look and the old feel. Mm-hmm. So they don't actually want a remaster or a remake. They're just happy to go, well, can I play this on my PS5 or my Xbox?
Like we saw recently with Activision bringing the old Call of Duty servers back online. I think there was over 100,000 people on Black Ops.
I'm loving that.
360.
I can't wait to jump back on them.
That's
in the next few weeks, I'm going to go back and play Black Ops 2 and stuff again, for sure. But throwing it back to your career, I know that you spent some time over in America working for Rockstar. How did that come about?
So, Rockstar was my first job in the games industry. So I studied at Bradford University. Mm-hmm. I did what was essentially a computer science degree there with a little bit of focus towards games. When I graduated, I got my first job. It was actually at Rockstar Leeds, which, they weren't based in the centre of Leeds, but they are now. And I worked there for about 7 or 8 years roughly before setting up Red Kite Games. What happened with that was a few years into my career at Rockstar, and Red Dead Redemption was being developed, and that was being led by the San Diego studio. And myself and a few of my colleagues from Rockstar Leeds, we were asked, would you be up for coming over to San Diego and helping finish the game, essentially? So there was a gang of us that went over there, programmers, designers, and we were tasked with working closely with the San Diego team to help finish the game. And I think overall, I was over in San Diego for about 9-10 months, helping finish Red Dead Redemption, which was an incredible game when it came out. So.
I was going to say, what's it like now, looking back at the fact you had a part in that game, and it's been one of the most critically acclaimed games. It's had a number 2, which has done fantastically well. But I remember playing that when I was young. Do people ever come, like, when you're talking about gaming, that's like the pinnacle? What's it like to have worked on that?
It is, it's quite special. I think also what's equally special was the people that I was working with and the talent that was going into that game and the creativity, and just the time, the effort, everything that was going into making that such a blockbuster game. And looking back, it is something that I'm very proud of. It's probably one of the highlights of my career, going and doing that and working on that game. And I think that it's also nice, but the lucky thing of working at a Rockstar is that the games that they make, it's they've not really had one that you'd even consider unsuccessful. Mm-hmm. So it's always great. And then when those games come out and you're able to share what you've done with your family and friends, there is a lot of kudos around it, and you're proud to get your credits in the game and talk to your friends about the bits that you did. And even to the point where my mum and dad, they never played games. They weren't really into it. But even they were able to recognise that, what I decided to do for a living was very legitimate, mm-hmm. And wasn't just, Simon plays games all day or anything silly like that. So, but one of the things I did on Red Dead, which I was very, very proud of, was that I was in charge of designing the very first mission of the game.
Wow.
So like the first 20 minutes of Red Dead Redemption, aside from the opening cutscene, which led into the mission, was very much directed by myself, working closely with the production team and the art and the code team to bring all that content together. And it was a lot of hard work, but something, again, as I say, I was very proud of. And what's quite critical about that is that you know that everybody who buys that game is going to play that bit. Some people don't complete games, and especially games of that size. But every person that bought Red Dead will have played those first 20 minutes of the game, and that was quite a responsibility for me to really help guide the delivery of it.
I think with that first mission, it's also like imperative that you get the general gist of the game. You give them a feel for most mechanics, and packing that all into one level, I imagine, is quite a challenge. And especially with a game as expansive as Red Dead, with the amount that you can do to try and nail it all down to one single starting mission. I can't imagine that was an easy task.
Because you want to make it fun, but you're also teaching the player what to do at that point, which can sometimes feel a little dry in games.
If it's a bit hand-holdy sometimes, can't it? Yeah.
So it was, trying to come up with creative ways to help the player just learn some of those mechanics. And, a good example that I can remember was having a broken down train, which was stopping the tracks for you to start heading up towards Fort Mercer. And it was to teach you how to slow your horse down and bring it to a stop. So as you approached the train, you couldn't pass it, so you slowed down your horse, stopped. Then you could see the engineer had fixed the train went off, and then you could carry on up to Fort Mercer. So it was like, well, how do you... Because you could have just said, well, press these buttons and this is how you do it. But instead, it was, try to bring a gameplay mechanic in there to make it just seem, real. So.
Speaking of mechanics, I know during your time at Rockstar, I think you worked a little bit on LA Noire as well. And that was a really unique game. The way that game ran, especially having like facial emotions and stuff in there. What was it? Were you trying to do something really different there when you were working on it, or was the team? Because when I played that, I thought it was something completely different.
So definitely, I mean, I wasn't really involved in the face tech that the game was famous for, but obviously it was very impressive at the time when it came out, and what they were trying to do with that realism and also bringing real life actors into the game. So yeah, it was definitely something where they were trying to push technology there, and yeah, I think that they did it quite successfully. I think what was a little different with LA Noire was that it was a bit of a step away from the more action-heavy games that Rockstar were doing with the likes of GTA and things like that, and being a bit more, that detective, a little bit slower paced. And I think that the timing of it was very well. I think it was the timing of it was perfect. I think people were wanting that kind of game. They hadn't really seen it in a while. There was a bit of action, the setting, the themes, the time, and then the slightly slower gameplay, and the bit more of solving a mystery, almost pointing, but almost going back to some of those older point and click games in a way, that we hadn't really seen for quite a long time, since the big ones like Monkey Island and Discworld and all those kind of games. So I think that in two ways, there was the face tech, but then there was also felt, well, Rockstar are great at delivering high quality games, and there was maybe a little bit of a niche there for something a little different.
I do think that when I first initially purchased LA Noire and played it for the first time, my brain was thinking, this is Rockstar. I'm going to be able to smash up cars and do all that stuff, because you're thinking GTA, and then as you start to slowly get into it, you start to realize, oh no, this is an entirely different, it feels like it's in a similar world because the engine's quite similar, but it's like an entirely different experience that you've got in there. I think it was a fantastic game.
So what was the path from Rockstar into creating Red Kite Games? Where did that idea come from?
I always had an ambition to start my own business. That was even before I knew that I was going to go into games. I always thought at some point I'd like to give it a go. And as I mentioned, I spent 7 or 8 years at Rockstar honing my craft and learning how to make games. But then, the time came where I'd just finished working on LA Noire. The games at Rockstar are very long development cycles. I was just getting ready to be moved on to the next project, which at that time probably would have been GTA 5. And it was a case of going, well, Simon, if you don't do it now, it's probably going to be another 4+ years minimum before you do it again, because I'm not the kind of person where I'd leave a project halfway through. I'd want to always see it through to the end. So there's a little bit of timing, I absolutely enjoyed every minute at Rockstar with the games that I got to make and the people that I was able to work with. But it was the right timing, and so yeah, that's when I decided to make the jump and set up myself and see where that took me. But I guess with hard work and a bit of luck, it's ended up being the best thing I ever did. So.
There's been some amazing games you've worked on at Red Kite. Just to name a few off the top of my head, I know there's God of War, Sackboy, Hogwarts Legacy, the Mafia games as well. Is there any highlights out of there that when you look back at and look at what you and the team did, you think, oh, we really smashed that one out the park?
Definitely. I mean, we pride ourselves on doing a good job no matter what the game. And as a business, we focused on wanting to work on those, AAA, quite big, impressive, the kind of games that, in some ways, you can see the comparisons to, what we learned as a team. A lot of Red Kite and the spine of the company. There's quite a bit of ex-Rockstar part of Red Kite now, and my fellow directors are. So those were the kind of games that we wanted to work on. So I think that some of those highlights have been, working on God of War 3 Remastered was quite early on in Red Kite's journey, but that was a really impressive game to because it pushed the PS3 to the absolute limits, that game, when it first came out, and we were getting to help bring it to the PS4, so we were able to turn all the dials up and make it even prettier, and again, it was a remaster that was really well received. But getting to work with the Santa Monica studio, who were just incredible, definitely there was a highlight there of you. It's almost like getting to work with alongside some of your heroes, because God of War, I've played every single one of them. I love that series of games to absolute death. So actually getting to be involved in one was definitely a highlight. I think some other games, and I don't want to, I don't really want to miss any of them out, because they all have important parts to play in what Red Kite's become. But 2 Point Hospital was a very big game for us. It's one of the games where we were very heavily involved in the development of that, working with 2 Point Studios and Sega, again, great partners. But that had quite technical challenges with it, with bringing it to the Switch, and the team absolutely knocked that out of the park. And then getting to work with 2K on those Mafia remasters as well, building that partnership with 2K, and we're still working with them now. I think we've been working together for over 6 years on various different games. So that was very important to us from a business perspective. Getting to work with one of the biggest publishers in the world and building a really good relationship with them. And then the last one that I'll call out has got to be Hogwarts Legacy. It's just been an absolute smash hit when it came out in February, which was great. And we worked on that game for over 4 years with Avalanche. So that was a long development cycle, probably the longest one that we've done to date at Red Kite. But we had a big impact on the game and got to work on lots of different areas. So yeah, and then when it came out and the game was just so well received, and just the buzz around it, and I think that it's certainly it's the highlight of this year, but it's definitely one of the highlights of Red Kite's journey. And there's more. There's Fall Guys that we've worked on, which is again an incredibly successful game, and a load more that I could kind of pluck out and mention. But I think the main driver for us is what we want to be trying to work on, what are considered the biggest and best games, and luckily we seem to be doing a pretty good job of that.
Well, I was going to say, amazingly, I think the thing with Hogwarts Legacy was when it was being announced and the features were coming out, and you can do this, you can do that, you can do this. A lot of people because in recent years, Fallout 76 and games such as that, we've seen quite a few where they've been released and they're not polished, and they're missing stuff, and then there's the massive day one patch and all that kind of stuff. Whereas I think Hogwarts Legacy was well received, because when it was released, the promises were there, and it functioned well. And there was a couple of updates that were required, but I think as a whole, that was a big project that also delivered. I think it was a breath of fresh air for gamers everywhere, that we still can get quality games.
Yeah, and I think there was a sigh of relief in some ways that it came out and did that, and the credit has to go to Warner Brothers and Avalanche for just believing in the project and giving it the time that it needed. I mean, what I would say is those games that have been not so well received on their initial launch, it's always recoverable for them, and the dev teams work really, really hard. And what I would like to say in those instances is that making games is really difficult, and also now that we're making games across so many different platforms, and they all have different capabilities and what can push the game more or less, and depending on what you're playing it on, makes it increasingly difficult. So trying to get that parity across them all is a really, really big task now, especially with the size of the games that are being made. So yeah, I would always just, I guess, for gamers out there, is just bear that in mind a little bit, is that nobody's going out to make a bad game or to frustrate anybody. Everybody's trying to make the best thing possible. But yeah, sometimes it is a very hard thing to do, and yeah, no one's ever doing things on purpose to frustrate a player.
And also at the end of the day, it is a business.
Yeah.
So there is the shareholders and all that kind of stuff that come into play as well. So I think it's take it with a pinch of salt, isn't it? Really. Yeah.
I wanted to touch on this a little bit, because you mentioned there working with 2K and working with a load of different game studios, and how long some of those dev cycles can be, like with Hogwarts, which is 4 years. Maybe to put it into perspective for people that have no idea, how many people would typically work on one of those AAA games? Like, is it a massive team, or is it more just concentrated over time?
It's big teams.
Yeah.
You're talking hundreds and hundreds of people working on games of that size. So yeah, it's a very, very big endeavor, and you're talking big teams. You're talking companies that are spread throughout the world, different time zones, all the things of that coming together, and the organisation and the delivery of those projects is no kind of easy thing to do. So yeah, it's it takes a lot of people to make those kind of size of games and those caliber of games.
Yeah, I think it's quite easy to forget sometimes when you're a gamer. When I'm flicking through the new Call of Duty maps or playing the new Halo, etc., I don't think about the fact that probably 1,000 people have worked on a game like that at some point, have had some hand in it. One thing you mentioned there was the differences in hardware between all the different consoles, and I've started to see a little bit, and it's been really brought to the light with Xbox trying to purchase Activision. The increase in cloud gaming and how much people are focusing on that. Do you think that has a real place in gaming's future, or do you see hardware really taking the forefront still for the next decade or so?
I think we'll probably have a bit of both still. I do think that cloud gaming is going to play a very big part. Red Kite, we were actually one of the first adopters in the UK to be working on Google Stadia. And we shipped 2 Google Stadia games, and we also shipped 1 Amazon Luna game as well. So obviously Stadia isn't around anymore, but we were quite an early adopter of that, because we were quite a technical studio at Red Kite, and it excited us to get involved and see what was going on there. But yeah, I do think that it's going to play a very big impact, but I think that isn't going to be happening overnight quite yet. And I think we might be seeing certainly another generation of hardware in the mix of this. And yeah, I mean, I hope it comes as soon as possible, because I think it's going to be quite a cool thing to be able to have and do, and be an actual, fully fledged legitimate way of playing games. So that's quite exciting. We'll just have to wait and see, though.
Yeah, I really like it because I feel like with cloud gaming and especially now the fact that like PlayStation, Xbox and even Switch have a service where you can instantly get access to a whole bunch of games at one set price. When I was younger, I remember trying to persuade my parents to give me a tenner to go to Game or CEX and buy a random secondhand game. I wouldn't even be able to Google and find out if it was good or not. I'd just end up with whatever was there. But now I feel like people have instant access to hundreds of games. And I wondered, from someone that's inside the gaming industry, is that a net positive or a net negative? Because in my head, I think surely it would be better if people, for the company, if people are purchasing, let's say 40, 50 quid games as opposed to just signing up to Game Pass or to PlayStation Plus. How do the logistics of that work and working out those deals with those companies?
So it's very dependent on the game and, you know, who you're talking to. And, you know, there are, I mean, it just opens up more business models for a company to try and make money. So I don't think it's negative. I think if there's any perceived negative, it's just more the nostalgia of I've been playing games for quite a long time now, and it's, you know, I guess it's a little sad to think that, you know, people can pretty much now play games without ever having to go and buy one off the shelf. Mm-hmm. I mean, I even think about, you know, when renting games from Blockbuster and things like that, and, you know, going on a Friday or Saturday and, you know, getting excited and being worried that the game that you wanted to rent wasn't going to be there and things like that. You know, it's like, I know that sounds like painful probably to most people, thinking, well, I just want to have the game that I want to play, but, you know, it's almost like a rite of passage, I thought, in and, you know, those things just don't exist anymore. So maybe there's a bit of nostalgia there with it. But I think another positive of what I like, you know, with things like Game Pass and Nintendo's and Sony's versions of them, is it's quite nice, I think, for the younger generation of gamers that are coming through to, you know, if their parents go out and buy them a console, they don't necessarily have to worry about buying them any games, because if they sign them up to a subscription service, you know, Christmas morning, they've got a big selection of games that they can pick from. And, you know, and then I'm sure, you know, grandparents or, you know, family will then maybe buy the odd game here or there. And, you know, so I think that's quite a nice thing, is just being able to go, wow, I've got all this content that I can play and you know, and I think that's quite a nice element to it. But, you know, more routes to market, more ways of getting your games out there, selling your games, doing different types of deals with the platform holders. I see, yeah, it's positive. It just means that there's more ways to get you know, good games made, whether you're an independent, you know, one-man band indie all the way up to the bigger studios. Is that hopefully that means if you've got a good game and a good product, that you can get it out there in some form, and people can play all the hard work that you've completed to make it.
I think the accessibility of games has gone up massively in the last few years. And I know that you have a charity as well that you work on called SpecialEffect, or SpecialEffect maybe, I'm not sure which one of them it is. But that is to bring people with disabilities into gaming so that they're able to play games and pretty much just open it up to people that aren't usually able to. Mm-hmm. When did you set that up, and what have been some of the highlights there? Is there any particular events or products you've made or people you've brought in that have had a big impact?
So SpecialEffect, it isn't a charity that has been set up by Red Kite. It's a charity that we support. It's our official charity. Okay. I'm an ambassador for SpecialEffect, and, you know, it is a charity that's very close to my heart, and that you know, everybody at Red Kite gets involved with and enjoys the fact of being able to give back to the games industry a little bit as part of the work that they do. But how you described the charity was absolutely spot on, Joe. But yeah, I mean, it's there's lots of things that we've got involved with, but it's just, I think, it's such an incredible charity that you know, it's a growing charity. It's, you know, it's arguably still quite niche with it being video games focused, but, you know, it's getting bigger and bigger all the time. And some of the things that they do, I think, are so important. I mean, you know, some of the people that they help, you know, they used to be able to play games and then can't, and suddenly they've lost that part of their life, and, you know, that can be such a challenging. So any way that then SpecialEffect can come and, you know, they do special rigs, special controllers, they do all different things to support, but then, you know, it's not a one-shot thing and done. They'll support that person for their entire life for trying to, you know, continue to play games. And some of the things that they've managed to do have been incredible, like setups where, you know, I can't remember the name of the young man, but it was, you know, being able to complete GTA 4 with just playing the game with his chin and things like that. And it's like just incredible what they're able to do. And, you know, I know there's some people that have benefited from the charity of, you know, being able to play FIFA, and, you know, there's things like, you know, young lads that, you know, they're not able to go to school for various reasons, and they've then started, you know, it's their contact back to playing FIFA with their friends again, and just getting that kind of normality and kind of back into the, you know, and something that they thoroughly enjoy. So yeah, charity that's very close to my heart. We're a big supporter of it, and yeah, they do incredible work. And, you know, I definitely recommend go and check out the website, and especially if you're into gaming, because I think it's just one of those things where, again, as a gamer, or somebody that's working in the games industry, you'll look at it and you'll have a massive appreciation for what they're trying to do, because, you know, if you were in that situation, you'd be wanting SpecialEffect to help you. So
with I think accessibility to gaming is a massive thing that, you know, it's great that we do care about that, because I don't think I've ever personally considered the fact that, you know, potentially anybody could have to stop gaming. You don't really think of it as a thing that could happen and that it would impact you as much as you'd imagine. But then when you actually think how much time you commit to games themselves, and it being a large chunk of your life, to have that ripped away cannot be fun. No. And in terms of accessibility to gaming as a whole, I think it kind of veering away from special effects, moving into more accessing games from the past. How do you feel about the opportunities that, you know, the places like Nintendo and such give now, where we can actually play these older games without having to have the physical copies? Because I do know that, you know, if you're wanting to get the old, you know, a SNES or a NES, it's going to cost you a lot of an arm and a leg, and to get any games to play on it, you know, it's nigh on impossible. And I know maybe about 10 years ago, Nintendo really weren't hot on the idea of people playing these older games, but now they seem to have, you know, opened the doors and said this is okay. How do you
I think it's great.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many good games that, you know, as you say, that you can access very quickly and be able to play almost instantly. And, you know, I think that, you know, the history of video games and being able to experience that by actually playing them is never going to be a bad thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I love it because, you know, I've been, you know, playing games since the day I could hold a control pad or hit a key. So the fact that I can go back and still play most of those, even if it's for 5 minutes or, you know, just for that little nostalgia kick, it's great. And then the other thing I think is good about it is some of those games, you know, the complexity of them aren't as complex as the big games that come out now. Mm-hmm. I mean, my little boy, he's 3.5, so like you know, he loves playing Pac-Man. He can actually play that game at that age. You know, it's pretty much one input, and you know, what you see is what you get. You know exactly what you're doing. So I think that, again, for younger gamers, when they're starting, that it's like still going back to those original games is the best place to start.
Definitely.
And you know, if we didn't have access to them, then you wouldn't be able to do that. So yeah, I think it's great.
That's it. And there is some consoles out there that I think, you know, there's emulator-wise, you can do it, but you struggle without the hardware. And I think those ones are such as like DSs, anything with 2 screen, any that kind of field, it's a bit more difficult. But I think there is ways to play games on older DSs and such. So
100%. And you know, one of the games that I worked on that was pretty much one of the first games I ever worked on was Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars.
That's what I wanted to loop
and
into.
The DS version is by far the definitive edition of it. It's the best way to play the game. So yeah, no emulator on the world is going to be able to beat you. If you want to play that game properly, you're going to have to go and find a DS.
Hot wiring cars, building sniper rifles, and then the controversial drug dealing mini games. You had to go around and trade the drug. Yeah, that was a fantastic game.
The sniper rifle mini game is so I did that in GTA Chinatown Wars.
There you go, fantastic. Yeah, that was one of my favorite GTA.
Yeah, that was one of my missions where you had to take out the enemies on the rooftop using that sniper rifle.
Yeah. Because it was always one of those games where you'd say to your friends, "Have you played GTA on DS?" And those two words just don't coincide with each other. And I think the first GTA they did on handheld was it was on the Game Boy Advance or something like that. But it was it was more like GTA London, wasn't it, top down? But I think Chinatown Wars was really a fantastic game.
It's still the highest rated Nintendo game on Metacritic.
Doesn't surprise me. Does not surprise me.
Yeah, and I think it's. I mean, I might be wrong with this, but it's I think it might be the only non-Nintendo game to beat a Nintendo game as well.
On their console, because they're all Mario Kart and Mario Brothers, aren't they?
So it was incredibly critically acclaimed, that game. And I think if I was hand on heart, I would probably say it's just it might be because it was the first. What I consider, I did work a little bit on Vice City Stories as well, but for me, it was the first game I worked on, and it's probably I think the game that I love the most that I worked on, which surprises people sometimes with some of the bigger games, but GTA Chinatown Wars was I think was an incredible achievement.
As a concept to bring GTA to a Nintendo console, end of, never mind the DS, is such a, I don't know, it seemed like such a crazy idea to me, so I imagine actually executing it must have been even more fun.
And it was a really big technical challenge as well.
I can imagine.
Sticking on the GTA theme, I feel like I've got to ask this for anyone listening. As someone who used to work at Rockstar and is still in the gaming industry, when are we going to get GTA 6? What's your prediction? I know you're not working on it. Do you have a prediction? Is it going to be in this decade? Are we going to get it before 2030?
You know what? This is going to be a really boring answer for you, but I don't have a clue. Right? Because, Rockstar, they work on games until they're ready. So it could be the next couple of years. It could be the next 6 years. I really wouldn't be able to tell you because of the way that they make the game. So unfortunately, I can't give you any any insider info.
I thought we might have had one there. But moving on, there's one question we ask everyone on the podcast, everyone that comes on, and that is for your dream festival, music festival. This is so for 3 headliners, a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night headliner at your dream music festival. It's a random curveball.
It comes out of nowhere.
We've asked
every time.
We've asked scientists, neuroscientists. We've asked bands as well, admittedly. But
do you know what? You've asked me the worst question you possibly can because I am useless with music. I barely even listen to it. That's the thing. So I don't know if I can answer that without just sounding like an idiot.
All right. Well, how about we switch it up? We'll switch it up then. We'll say, if you had a gaming festival and there was one game that was the highlight of each night, so everyone had to sit and play and complete this one game, what 3 games would you pick?
I like that.
Okay, well, I'd pretty much go with...
Definitely Chinatown Wars now.
You know what? I'm probably not going to pick any of the games I worked on. I'd go with Resident Evil 4. I absolutely loved that game.
It's a fantastic game.
I would go with Metal Gear Solid 2. And either of The Last of Us are probably the 3 games that I think... I don't know, there's too many.
There really is. They just keep popping in.
I mean, one game that I did really enjoy playing, which is also, fun to play with lots of different people, is the games that have recently been being done by Supermassive. I don't know if you've played any of them, like the Man of Medan, and there was Until Dawn, and it's very much about... playing with your friends, right. And it's the game concept is is that the game is better to play and safer to play because again it's a kind of a survival horror style, and those games are really really good fun to sit down and play with together, and you all play different sections, so it's very much it's almost like a bit of a episodic, almost like you can sit down with popcorn and friends and play through it, and you get through it in a night. And the idea is that you've got to try and keep all of the characters or as many of them as alive once you get to the end. So they're pretty good fun. So I think they go down well at a festival. But yeah, I mean those games are I'd certainly have no problems with sitting down and playing them again. But I don't know, maybe if we had more time, is we could go decade by decade, and I'd do 3.
You pick 3 from every year.
But they're certainly 3 games that spring to mind, and that I know that I got a massive kick out of playing them when I was first got them in my hands.
It'd be one of those questions where you'll go away now, and then you go, bollocks, there was that one. There was that one question. I could have thrown another answer in there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You mentioned playing games with your friends there, and I've noticed a little bit of a trend in the last few years of couch co-op making a little bit of a comeback, maybe not quite as much as I'd like it to, but you've got games like It Takes Two, A Way Out. Obviously, there was the Master Chief Collection a while back as well, which is Halo's one of the best co-op games ever, in my opinion. Within the gaming industry, has there been a bit more of a focus on that? Just try to get more co-op games out there?
I mean, I think that there's been a much bigger push for online games and online components, and then, if that is feasible in terms of the game and the style of the game, is then also having the ability to play in the same room as well as play online. So I think that's pushed it forward. I love co-op games where, I'm not a big online player, if I'm honest. I don't really play that many games where I don't necessarily know who I'm playing with, or but what I do enjoy is sitting down with my family, with my friends, and all playing together in a room, and that enjoyment that but that's probably again from the era of me growing up with playing things like Mario Kart and stuff like that, where it was all about being sat on a couch together. Or GoldenEye, that was just
fantastic.
I think I wasted, I definitely didn't waste it, but many summers playing that with friends. So there's just something special about it that I don't think you can ever you can't emulate over if it's completely online. I think it's great that you can, because if you've got a friend in Australia, or you've got family and things like that, and you can still play games together, that's amazing. But actually being able to sit next to the people that you're playing with and get annoyed with them when they beat you.
That's it.
You're never going to beat that.
I think it's good that Nintendo is still very clearly, pandering to the couch co-op kind of genre, with the Switch having 2 controllers straight out the bat, and there's a lot of games on Switch. Nintendo games, like you were saying, Mario Kart being a big one, and those sorts of games.
I think we've seen ones like Overcooked and Moving Out and stuff. Those like not AAA games, but really fun to play with friends. And as you said, it's those ones that get you really angry as well when you're there playing those with your friends. It's
almost like an expanded arcade experience for those games, where it's the premise is pretty simple, but then the amount of levels that they have in it and the amount of different features that crop up in each level, I think, is what then makes it a fully fledged couch co-op game.
Definitely,
which is good.
I wanted to speak about VR games, because I had an Oculus at one point, and I've seen the new PlayStation VR come out recently, but I feel like it's not quite catching on yet. I don't know whether it's because the tech's not really as good as it is on a console. Obviously, it can't be quite as powerful because it's tied to your head. But working in the gaming industry, is there any VR games you've worked on or you've looked at and think, that could actually be what it's like in the future?
So, Red Kite and myself, we haven't worked on any VR games. With the kind of games that we've talked about and that we've worked on, there just isn't really that market, I think, for VR versions of them, or what would be similar to them. So part of our business strategy at Red Kite was we wanted to work on big AAA. There's a lot of open world games there, a lot of things that stick to our strengths, and so that's meant that we haven't really touched the VR space, if I'm honest. I think that there's some incredible games out there in VR, and there's some game studios that are making massive just strides and are being successful in that space now. So that's really good to see and promising to see, because what we need is VR games companies that are being able to build legitimate businesses by selling their VR games and their VR experiences. As soon as that starts happening, then that's and I think it is. So where that goes, I'm not 100% certain, and it isn't really in Red Kite's kind of future as such. We're very focused on things that aren't in the VR space, really, because that's what we're very good at. So yeah, I can't really give you much of a first-hand experience because of that. But I think that there is something special about it, and I know plenty of people that really enjoy VR, and the hardware and the tech's going to just keep getting better, and so are the experiences. And yeah, it's nice to see some companies now, and some in the UK as well, that are really starting to push on in that space, and see kind of where that goes for them.
With VR, I think we're not going to see massive uptick in users of it until it gets to a point where we don't have to have an entire room dedicated to just playing VR, to the point where we can just have a headset on at the computer and be able to move and for it to pick us up. But I don't know how feasible that will be in the near future, whether that will come anytime soon. But I think once we get to that point, I think that's when we'll start to see it become,
and it's still a very high price point. I mean, look, consoles aren't cheap, but yeah, the price points of VR still. I mean, I know there are cheaper, more affordable and accessible versions, but if you want what is the bleeding edge, kind of what's pushing the most powerful tech, it generally is expensive.
I mean, in the same way as consoles, I mean, if you want the PS5, you buy the PS5.
Yeah.
So if you want, the Oculus, you get the Oculus, or however you're going to go down that
Well,
road.
yeah, I mean, look, if you're looking at, you want to play a PSVR 2 game or something, and it's like, well, you have to buy a PS5, then the headset, then the game. You've probably spent nearly £1,000.
That's it. Yeah.
So it's definitely not cheap.
Yeah, I'm always trying to predict, like we mentioned cloud gaming. I'm always trying to predict what the next big thing in gaming and just in tech in general is. And I keep seeing stuff about that new Apple VR headset, and I'm thinking, or AR even, but it's practically a VR one as well. I'm thinking if they manage to do that well and get that in enough people's hands, that could be what pushes at least smaller VR games to a next level, because obviously Apple are the kings at just getting everyone in the world to have a product. So if everyone in the world has that, I feel like gaming companies might focus a little bit more on that type of game. But just to round things off, is there any games at the minute that you're working on at Red Kite that you wanted to talk about?
There are a few games that we're working on that are unannounced, which
I feel like they might be top secret,
which I am not allowed to really talk about, but we've got some quite exciting projects in the studio at the moment, some quite big projects that I can't wait to be able to let people know about, because, they'll be quite excited about it. I think something as well, which I always like to, and this is a great place to plug it again, is just like people not realising just the kind of games that are getting made in Leeds and within the Yorkshire region, not knowing, at Red Kite, where, we're working on Hogwarts Legacy, and we were working on Fall Guys, and then we were also working on Control with Remedy, and these big games that we're working on. And it's like, well, nobody necessarily even knows that that's going on in their doorstep in Leeds, and just like how some of the Yorkshire games companies are involved with making such incredibly big and just impressive games that we all love and play. So yeah, there's lots of kind of cool things going on, and I can't wait to talk about them a bit more. I mean, we're still working on Fall Guys with Mediatonic and Epic, helping to maintain that game and bring more content and do live ops for them on that. So that's quite a cool, exciting game. And then, everything else, I'm afraid, guys, I can't mention to you at this time, but we've got some pretty cool stuff going on. We've got some quite high profile, quite big IP games that maybe next time I'll be able to go, those were the ones that I was I wasn't able to tell you.
We'll wait a little bit, and next time we do an episode, we'll be able to say, all right, well, it was those games then. And hopefully by that point, there's a whole list of them as well. But Simon, thank you so much for joining us. Really great conversation. I love to learn more about games.
Always.
And you are correct. Whenever I tell people, even that like Rockstar or Red Kite are in Leeds, they're like, eh?
It's always seen as such an American thing, like LA and that. And also like Rockstar's in Glasgow as well. And when you find out about that, you think, Glasgow? What? Because they made the original G. And it's just, to find out that, in the United Kingdom, never mind Yorkshire alone, that we're having these crazy developments is amazing.
100%. And something that's exciting for us, I guess, not being able to talk about the games too much, but something that is exciting, I think, for Red Kite, the region, and Leeds in particular, is so we're a studio of roughly about 80 developers at the moment, but we are going to be expanding. We're opening the 5th floor in the building, which is going to allow us to grow the team quite sizably. So that's going to be quite exciting for us. We're growing the team. We're going to be working on more kind of cool games, and bringing quite a number of jobs and things like that into to the region as we push on and help develop more games and do things ourselves. So that's quite an exciting development for us as we continue to grow the studio. So yeah, that's, I think, quite a cool thing, as I say, for Leeds and the region as well, as we get more involved.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Seeing that in my home city is amazing, especially with games that I love and genuinely do play as well. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm sure we'll do it again at some point.
Thank you to you both as well for having me.
Thank you very much.